Good morning and welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation in warm and sunny Tucson, Arizona. We are coming to you today from our homes. We acknowledge your desire to be together in our wonderful new sanctuary. And we are aware that COVID infection numbers are dropping here in Tucson, perhaps making that possible in the near future. We welcome you wherever you are and whatever your religious beliefs, political leaning, or sexual orientation may be. Please know that you are welcome here. We are better and we are stronger because you are here. I'm Debbie Roberts, a pastoral associate here at MVUU. My fellow PA, Robin Bazel, will also make an appearance today. This congregation is served by the Reverend Dr. Samantha Wilson, our interim minister, whom we have been fortunate to have with us for 2.5 years now, but whom we will have to say goodbye to in a few short months. Boo-hoo. Chris Tackett is our music director, and Lee McMillie is managing the complex technology that's necessary to produce this service from her home. The theme for this service is Listening is an Act of Love. And a new member of our community, Kim Lager, will join us to talk about how she communicates with her son Dylan, who is deafblind, and how listening is the first step to communication. We look forward to hearing from her. Before I knew the exact title of this service, when all I knew was that the theme for this month is listening, and that I would have to find something clever to say about listening, I came across a quote by Paul Tillich, which is, "The first duty of love is to listen." Kim's testimonial will be in tribute to that idea. But it is the day before Valentine's Day, which got me thinking about this quote in the context of romantic love and considering how important it is for me to listen carefully to my partner. I need to hear not only the words, but the intentions behind the words and the thoughts and feelings that may be left unsaid, but which are there if I listen with all my heart and truly lean into what he is saying. I want to be a better listener. I know too that I need to listen carefully to myself, which is also an act of love. As I age, I need to listen when my body tells me that I can't be the weekend warrior that I was in my younger years, or when I don't feel quite at peace with myself and realize that what I need is to be near the ocean. At the beach, I can listen to the sound of the waves breaking and the seagulls squawking. I can smell the salt air and drink in the humidity and be healed. I also need to listen to whatever messages the universe has for me. Listen and let those messages fill my soul with loving kindness and a renewed sense of purpose. I need to listen long enough and well enough to be changed. The first duty of love is to listen. I ask you now to listen to these words from the Reverend Joe M. Cherry, entitled, "A Prayer for Listeners," as we light our chalice today. When my ears are full of the worries, the concerns, the pains of others, grant me permission for silence. When my arms and shoulders and back ache from the burdens of others, grant me permission to set them down. Guide me to another, a friend perhaps, to talk with, not for once to be talked at. And may I not be a burden to them as I pour out my pain, my weariness, my exhaustion, but a place, a space of mutual care. My listener friend, may you always know, no matter how tired I am, you can turn to me too.
Before we go any further this morning, let's take a second and listen to our breaths. Let's listen to our body. And let's take a second to be together and breathe. Let's all breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. If you feel so inclined, you can sing with me. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Just keep this going. And if you hear anything this morning that challenges you, just keep breathing, no matter what. Breathe in, breathe out. And if you hear anything that makes you happy, just keep breathing, no matter what happens. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. And when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe in love. Breathe in, breathe out. Keep it going. Breathe in. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe in love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
Good morning, everybody. And Debbie, that was such a perfect lead in to what I'm going to talk about today. It sounds so unfamiliar when I talk about it through thinking about deaf blindness, but you just made it so real for all of us and how we do this every day. So you haven't met my son, Dylan, yet. He has a syndrome, Chard syndrome. And as a result of that syndrome, he is completely deaf and has very limited vision. And they refer to this combination of vision and hearing loss as deaf blindness. When he was born, I had no experience with deaf blindness and certainly no experience with how to communicate with somebody who was deafblind. Of course, I knew about Helen Keller, but I also knew she had some hearing and vision before she got sick, but I had no idea how I was going to communicate with Dylan. I remember holding him and thinking to myself, how am I even going to calm him? How can I soothe him if he can't hear me sing to him, if he can't see the expression on my face? But of course, he did respond to me, and he did soothe to my voice. Maybe he just felt it. I'd like to share a couple of thoughts about how I did learn to listen to and communicate with Dylan using all of my senses, and how that relates to listening and communicating with anyone. When Dylan was first born, I thought of him as deaf, with some vision loss, and I was obsessed with providing him access to communication. I thought then that communication was about people using words, spoken or signed, to send and receive messages. I thought these words were how I was going to get to know Dylan and how he was going to get to know me. If he could not hear, it seemed reasonable that a visual language would be more accessible to him. So we began to learn American Sign Language when he was just an infant. But as often happens when we determine what we think another person needs without listening to them first, I found out I was completely wrong. Dylan was not just deaf, and as much as we celebrated any indication he could see, it became clear that he did not have enough vision to compensate for his hearing loss. He was deafblind, and a solely visual language was not what Dylan needed. He was one when I first heard that big scary word, deafblind. It made me think of Dylan as trapped in a box, dark, alone, unreachable. But fortunately, I quickly realized he was actually safe inside his own treasure box. The only trick was that Dylan had the key inside the box. My job was not to dump language in, but instead to listen to him and figure out what he needed in order to use his key and open that lid and come out and engage with me. It's from that engagement that Dylan and I learned his language of signing, drawing, and writing with his hand on mine. To teach something new, my hand leads the way, and his hand just rests on top and follows. But if it's something familiar to him, my hand becomes passive, and then he provides the pressure and he guides my hand. Holding my hand out to him is an invitation to talk, to join in. Dylan taught me that beyond the words, communication is really about the connection. That time when each person feels safe enough to open their lid and connect. It's about recognizing the subtle things that contribute to that lid inching open a little farther, or it's starting to close, and noticing what we can do that's influencing that opening and closing. He taught me that trying to force that lid open doesn't work. It only either clams shut tighter, or it might even flare open with what they call a behavior. He taught me to have patience in giving him time to receive and process my message and generate a response without my attention going elsewhere and missing his response. And he taught me to listen to what his body and energy were telling me about what I should do next, if anything. In the field of deafblindness, we try to get people to understand this concept of following the child, to wait for their response before plowing on with our own agenda. One presenter gave up and just bluntly said, "Just step back and shut up." For some, this was just the message they needed to hear. But to me, that's not it. People have always stepped back from Dylan, perhaps afraid because they'd never met anyone like him and they didn't know how to talk with him. And of course, the brain does think of new as potentially dangerous. Instead, we need to lean in with an invitation and then wait for his response. It's here in this pause where he can feel seen and respected and valued and secure enough to open his treasure box and connect. But what about when people are using words to communicate? Do the same principles apply? I suggest they do. And the more we lean in and listen with more than our ears to what the other person's saying and what their body and energy are communicating, the more we will really hear what they are telling us. So I invite us, as we communicate with people we know, people we've just met, perhaps people we know who've lost the ability to communicate through words. Maybe they have Alzheimer's or have had a brain injury. And perhaps communicating with people that we feel there's something different or unknown about them that makes us feel slightly uncomfortable. That in each of these situations, that we lean in and wait. Dylan has taught me that he's not really that different from the rest of us. We all have our own treasure boxes that keep us safe and protected. And at times, we're more or less engaged with the people in the world around us. When we have a migraine, we probably want to go in and don't want people messing with us. If we're angry, that lid might flare open and then we come back in and hide. If we feel unsafe, we may pull back. But if we feel safe and grounded and secure and feel that that other person communicating with us values our input, then perhaps that lid is going to fling wide open and be available for that connection. To be clear, as we begin to get in touch with our own treasure boxes, the box is our bodies, and access to it is through our senses. The lid is the autonomic nervous system, which shifts based on our feelings of control and safety, and that allows us to become more or less connected with the people and the world around us as it opens and shuts. The magic is that is in our feeling grounded and safe and secure in our own box, that we can then open our lids and project this feeling of safety and welcome outward to others, helping elevate or dampen the other person's autonomic nervous system to the point that they are able to open up and join us. And if you're interested in the science behind that, you can look up Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, and I'll write it in the chat later. If you're feeling anxious in a social situation, you can mentally enter your own box and find your own sense of calm and safety. Then as you open back up, you can bring that safety into your interaction with the another person. So for now, I'll kind of guide you in a type of meditation. You can turn your camera off if you like, or you can leave it on, whatever's comfortable for you. And we're going to take a journey into our own treasure boxes, calming our hearts and minds, and feeling those shifts that help us feel safe and secure. I will lead with some words that feel right to me, recognizing that each person's box is different than others. What feels calming and safe and secure to me may leave another person feeling less secure. If you feel tension in any way, I encourage you to make adjustments that help you feel that sense of safety and security and grounding. First, I want you to sit in a position that makes you feel comfortable. Maybe it's with your feet firmly planted on the floor, or in a meditation posture, or maybe you prefer to sit curled up on the couch with your feet under you and your head and your back supported. Close your eyes and breathe. In and out. In and out. Allowing your lid to gently close. As your lid closes, the sensations of the outer world begin to fade, and you may become more aware of the sensations within. For some, this may increase your sense of anxiety or pain. If that's true for you, perhaps you keep your lid slightly open and let a little light in. Or perhaps you make sure your head is leaning against something and supported. And as the light dims, you may find you become more aware of the sounds around you, or even the sounds of your own voice chattering away in your head. As this happens to me, I find a few words from Spring Forest Qigong help me shut it out. You can try it with me. Become aware of your breath. And as you breathe in all that is good in the universe. And as you breathe out, exhale all that does not serve you. Breathe in all that is good. And breathe out all that does not serve you. Breathe in all that is good. Breathe out all that does not serve you. You are safe. You are whole. You are well. And from that place of safety, become aware of your heart, calmly and steadily beating and filled with love to share. You are safe. You are whole. You are well. It is safe to emerge. As the music begins, feel free to open your lid at your own pace. You are safe. You are whole. You are well. You have love to share. It is safe to emerge.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease.
Mm, thank you, Kim. I can feel my own teary-eyedness, which seems to be a daily occurrence. I'm not sure if that's true for each of you at some level. Bubble up when someone else takes care of me. And I have felt that, Kim, so deeply. And that's what we're bringing to you today. Here, sandwiched between Kim's sweet offering and a beautiful piece of choral music from your MVU choir, I'm here to do a wellness check. I'm here to do a wellness check on each of you. And the way that that's going to happen is you're going to notice a poll pop up on your screen. And that poll is going to ask you how resourced you are feeling right now. And when I say resourced, I'm asking you, sitting where you are, centered by Kim's gift, and here in this open-hearted space, how are you really, really? Do you have energy that is pouring out of you, or does it feel dry? Is there a feeling of vitality, or do things feel fragile right now? Do you even feel capable of listening, let alone leaning in, let alone waiting? Would it even be possible to let someone lean in closer to you? You'll see it pop up on your screen. If you're sharing a computer, you'll only be able to answer once. So good luck. Here's how you're doing, community. In your current state of being, there's such a mix of you, but it seems that some of you are feeling very resourced. Some of you are somewhat resourced. Some of you are neutral. A chunk are under-resourced, and there's a couple of us who are feeling not resourced at all. So I start with that in the spirit of Kim's offering around boxes and attunement. I personally love turning my camera off. Part of that is because I feel doomed to attune. And in fact, all of us are doomed to attune, but perhaps from socialization as a woman and training as a minister, there's a way that I can lean in so far that I'm actually not leaned in, I'm toppled over, and I'm no longer in my own body, but tilted over into someone else's. And there's something about turning off a Zoom camera. There's something about turning off a Zoom camera that allows me, like the same quality of closing my eyes in a moment that really matters to me, to lean into my own self. And now this might be true for you all too. We're taking in information all the time, not just from our ears, but from our environment, from our bodies, from the body of another, far beyond words. When we imagine listening as a transactional act of words to ears and ears to words, we actually miss out on the profound interdependence that is our deep communication and energetic exchange that is both beyond logic and deeply logical, that says that this exchange we're in is far beyond anything I can track. I am communicating with you all the time through my body. And so if through my body and into my body is the source of communication, the first lean in and wait will always be perhaps in your own being for yourself. And this might be the first act of love and listening, that it is not selfless, it is self-full. It's turning the body and tuning it as the real ear and the full instrument. Now, some of you might remember last year, Riley, the intern for Borderlands and UCT, taught a listening class. And in that listening class, initially, the goal was that we were all heading into the holiday season after the election. And so we had expressed, some of us, a deep need to practice listening. And then secretly, some of us acknowledged a deep need to practice listening, mostly so that we could learn the trick that we could use against someone else to get them to listen to us so that we could change their mind. It was a very interesting moment. We were all having to be more honest about why we were listening, the real goal of our listening. But what was key to that class, if some of you remember it, I see some of you nodding, is actually to say that sometimes love means choosing not to lean in and listen to the other. It actually assumed that love was feeling your own environment, giving your permission to feel who you were in this web of relatedness, to check in with the value, the goal of your listening, and then give permission to assess if you had the capacity to do so at all. So we were attuning to the lean. And in that beautiful way, Kim, when you described you and Dylan with your hands on top of one another, and the ability to move between whose hand guided and who was passive, and who was passive and who was guided, this ability to shift back and forth, that in some ways the first hand that guides us and cares for us is our own. The compassion and care with which I tend my own self will inevitably ooze out onto all of you. You get to ask yourself, am I in a safe place to lean in? You get to ask yourself, in these relationships and my space in these relationships, is this where I am to lean in, and towards what and towards whom? And you get to ask, in this moment, what am I really, really trying to do? Underneath my listening, am I trying to change a person's mind, be more comfortable, or feel connected again? And you have permission to ask, in this moment, what do I actually have the capacity to do? Knowing yourself finite. Are you treating yourself like an object, ignoring the cues of your own capacity or the person opposite of you? It's way more complex. It's not a simple matter of listening is love, so go do it. Nor, as many of us are trained in nonviolent communication, listen the right way so that people know you're listening. Listening is not a performance art. You live in a village, not a community of objects, and not for a course where there's a test at the end. We are related. So that is why Kim's metaphor, or realness, not even a metaphor, of touch is such a revitalizing image to me of listening, because touch actually acknowledges it really takes to be in the presence of another, that you are not there and I am over here, but in fact, energetically through air and sight, light and waves and vibration, I am touching you. And so to acknowledge that, given how much wound and trauma this culture and us have individually around touch and the trust touch takes, that it really takes my resourcefulness to be in the presence of another, to lean in and wait and be willing to be guided by you, and to trust that you actually are willing to be guided by me, and that we would be willing to go back and forth and be guided by each other, to be changed by each other. And could you imagine, thinking of love and space and church, that if you showed up to our community gathering or a church on Sunday with the expressed purpose of whose hand will be guiding me today? Whose hands will be guiding me today? Who will invite me to guide them today? Whose hands are at work here? It requires a posture than showing up to be good listeners. It's a posture that is resourced unto ourselves and then willing to be changed by others. And this is where, for me now more than ever, it matters. Our COVID numbers are going down. Some of you have seen that even today, I got 2 emails about this today. The numbers are at a lower level, a level by which we could open our doors to an in-person audience. Now, trust me, your COVID policy team of the board and the board will communicate with you in the coming weeks about what that would actually look like and when that would actually happen. But let's say it's on the near horizon. Now, track with me the 2 years we've had without the physical version of this. March 2020, our last service was a flower communion. We're not knowing what COVID would be like. Some of us tried our hand at making our own homemade hand sanitizer. And we got flowers that we thought were long enough to represent kindness. And we touched flowers to each other, not knowing when we would be together in person again. And we journeyed like that almost for a year into 2021, when that first surge started to move down into the lowest levels we had seen since 2020. And communities started imagining opening their doors in the summer, and we imagined opening our doors in the fall. But then what happened? By the fall, Delta was on the horizon. So we pulled ourselves back again, reimagined what we would be doing. And as we waited, we saw Delta was falling, and we thought maybe in January we can reopen. We could even have a building dedication. And then what happened? Omicron came. And so we pulled ourselves back again, and we sat quietly, and now here we are. And I'm sitting with the exhaustion of the pulling in and pulling back together. And I'm also sitting with the kind of loving kindness that it will take us as we again come out of our boxes and be in physical space with each other. And this is no small feat. I want to imagine that the real church of being together again will not be a fabulous sermon, although hopefully, and it won't be a chalice sitting in the same room, but it will actually be the feeling and the way that we all choose to move and come back together again. That we don't leave each other behind, that all the people working behind the scenes right now, your AV team, your pastoral associates, the board, the finance committee, the welcoming team, the greeting team, the hospitality team, the community connections, the buildings and grounds. I mean, imagine all the people behind the scenes moving and moving to make this space ready. How do we want to enter it? What spirit do we want to enter it with? This feeling, this next big push that we have coming up right on the horizon, our collective willingness to do one more big thing together when so many of us feel under-resourced. That we're relying on those of you who feel resourced to help move and flow and gather us together again. Let alone the exciting things on your horizon, a search team currently interviewing candidates, a building that is just on the verge of being open, and a goodbye between you and I. It feels appropriate now to imagine what we want to do when we show up together. To be guided by this image that Kim presented for me of a real lean in, a real noticing, a real acknowledgement, and then my hand on your hand and on your hand and on my hand. And this time, all the hand sanitizer we could possibly ever need with one another. We recently in pastoral care were sharing and reflecting on the feeling of under-resourcedness that some of us feel in our community. And I was reminded by the wise people of your pastoral care team that there is a very simple math to feeling resourced again. And it's a confusing math because when you are feeling under-resourced, it is tempting to do the one thing that will not help you, which might actually be to pull back from care. But we know, and we've witnessed, and pastoral care has taught us, that to feel resourced again involves the practice of not only giving, but receiving. And the flow gets reestablished. So I'm going to invite us into a moment of singing. And this spirit of singing is inspired by Chris and the choir getting started, but it's also inspired by the fact that reopening is on the horizon if all works out. And that when a community goes through a kind of grief or a kind of trauma, like our communities and our cultures have gone through over the last 2 years, there's more needed than quietly entering rooms and sitting in seats. But there's the practice of singing together, of moving together, of food together, all the very things we've had trouble being together with again. And there's a fabulous book, the new one I'm recommending to all of you, called Crisis Contemplation, Healing the Wounded Village by Barbara Holmes. And in this book, she looks at trauma as related to community life. And here she quotes another fabulous author, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who some of you know from The Body Keeps the Score, one of the original big fat tomes on complex trauma and the body. And here's what they write. After a collective trauma, people need to sing and move and dance and eat. And none of that is incorporated into the United States health system. But most of us who have worked outside of this dominant culture with other cultures, or maybe who have worked with refugees, see how essential it is to do these activities. Our songs and our communal sounds that we make together let us feel at one with the people around us, a way to reestablish our connection with other human beings. So I will invite us to sing the song that Brian invited us to sing this just a moment ago. And this is the song, May I Be Filled with Loving Kindness, that followed on the heels of Kim's words. And we're going to sing the full version that you just heard, but it moves outwards. You'll notice it from yourself, may I be filled. And then it moves to someone else, it moves to a you, may you be filled. And then it moves to a we, may we be filled. And I'm going to unspotlight myself, so it will be easy for you to find your gallery view. And I'm going to invite you to go into gallery view. And if you find yourself there, go ahead and get there. And with each verse, I will sing to you once. It'll be for yourself. But then when you say the you, may you be filled, I'm going to invite you to notice someone on the screen. Now, if you would not like to receive that attention, you are welcome to turn your camera off and remain off. But then when we move to we, I'm going to invite you to notice as much of the screen as you can and extend the flow from yourself to someone else. Let's begin. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. Now notice someone on the screen and center your attention on them. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. Now take in as much of our community as you can. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. May it be so.
As we close out our time together, I'd like to share with you a prayer for the listeners by Reverend Joe M. Cherry. When my ears are full of the worries, the concerns, the pains of others, grant me permission for silence. When my arms and shoulders and back ache from the burdens of others, grant me permission to set them down. Guide me to another, a friend perhaps, to talk with, not for once to be talked at. And may I not be a burden to them as I pour out my pain, my weariness, my exhaustion, but a place, a space of mutual care. My listener friend, may you always know, no matter how tired I am, you can turn to me too.